Agitorium nostrum in nomine Domini, qui fecit caelum et terram. So here we are in Detroit, Michigan, and just going to give a little talk on some of the new changes and attitudes and even compromises of our what was the last bulwark of tradition, the Society of St. Pius X. Now, as you know, there's been up to 12 groups of nuns and priests who have compromised with modernist Rome. And they were all promised, like Labarou in 1988, and in 2003, Campos, the priest of Bishop de Castelmaire, they were all promised, look, you'll get recognized by Rome, and you don't have to do anything. You don't have to accept anything or sign any profession of faith. But what happens is they do end up having to accept compromise little by little. And that's the danger. As one of the priests, I'm quoting here, they are told, here's what Bishop Athanasius Snyder said about Bishop Follet's conciliar allies, declaring today that Archbishop Lefebvre would have accepted a deal with Rome. Here's what Bishop Athanasius Snyder, who is not a traditional bishop, they're holding him up as some big traditional bishop. Yeah, he says the Latin Mass, but he accepts Vatican II, he accepts the new Mass. So that is a modernist. That's a modernist. So is Cardinal Burke. It's good. I hope they continue their passage from the Novus Ordo and Vatican II and the Conciliar Church to tradition. We got to pray that they do, like Bishop Lazo. Some of you may remember Bishop Lazo. Yeah, in the Philippines, he publicly said, I reject the new Mass of Paul VI, I reject the heresies of Vatican II, and I accept and hold the position of Archbishop Lefebvre. That was a great thing, and it was all known all over the world. He made clear his position, and he died a friend of tradition. But Bishop Hoandor, who has been accepted into the Society School and Priory in Switzerland, he has never done anything like this. He's never publicly condemned the new Mass or Vatican II. And he's there living at the Society Priory House with the full approval of Pope Francis and Bishop Follet. This would never happen if Bishop Follet and the Society held the line of Archbishop Lefebvre, declaring and continuing the war against the destruction of our Catholic faith by modernism that has filtered through the Vatican Council II and the new Mass. So here, I'm going to pull out here, in 1988, of course, Archbishop Lefebvre had to consecrate bishops. And Father... What's his name here? Father Cellier, who wrote a book. Father Cellier, who wrote a book promoting this agreement with modernist Rome. Oh yeah, and Father Simolin. And Father Simolin, you may remember in 2012, he put out a letter basically saying, we're not in the 1988 days, we're not in the 70s. This is 2012. Rome is offering us a deal. Archbishop Lefebvre would have accepted this deal. And that's false. And I want to touch on this. I want to touch on this briefly. Here's what Father Cellier said. That Archbishop Lefebvre was a pragmatic thinker, and being practical, he would have accepted the deal. Consequently, the SSPX, in reliance upon the subversive scheming of Father Cellier, who was a close collaborator with Bishop Fillet, treated the faithful to articles like Father Simolen's, which said we cannot be 88ers, in which it is alleged that, quote, whatever the state of Rome may be, of all that still remains that is disturbing in Rome, plain common sense and honesty should lead us to consider the current situation with different eyes than those of 1988. Recalling the saying of one of our own bishops, we cannot be 88ers. Close quote. Translation. Archbishop Lefebvre's position were good for his times, this is what it really means, but nobody can say that he would hold the same position in today's circumstances. Because as Father Simolen states in a completely solipsistic swoon, I quote Father Simolen. This is maybe a lot of hot air, so if you want to phase out, you can right now. But I'll read his quote. We are neither in 1975 with Paul VI, nor in 1988 with John Paul II, but in 2012 with Benedict XVI. It can be said as much as one may wish to, that the state of the Church is still of great concern, that our Pope has a theology that is at times strange, etc. We have said it enough, it seems to me, but let it not be said that the state of things is the same as in 1988 or worse. This is contrary to the reality and to the truth, and it cannot but be the effect of a more or less secret refusal of any reconciliation with Rome, perhaps of a lack of faith in the holiness of the Church, composed of poor sinners, but always governed by her head, Jesus Christ, and sanctified by the Holy Ghost. Close quote. So, and then the quote from Bishop Schneider saying that Archbishop Lefebvre would have accepted a deal, and they're talking 2012. And they're still holding this position, because one of the priests of the society recently said, Pope Francis is giving us all we ask. We ask for confessions, he's given jurisdiction for confessions. For marriages, he's given jurisdiction for marriages. And for holy orders, he's given all that. So they're saying now is the time we can be recognized. Now is the time that we can be like leaven in the dough and bring Rome back to tradition from within. I quote further, Archbishop Lefebvre was practical, you see, and today he would see how much better things are and what a great deal he was getting. But here is the truth of the matter. There is no doubt that Father Célier's and Father Simolen's principles of distinguishing between systematic and pragmatic thinkers is a legitimate hermeneutic. Next point. There is no doubt that of the two types of thinkers, Archbishop Lefebvre was pragmatic. Because Father Cellier, in his book, he says there's systematic thinkers who are in the clouds and pragmatic thinkers who deal with reality. So he's saying Archbishop Lefebvre dealt with reality. Rome is opening the door to an agreement. Rome is opening a door to give us recognition. Even though the Pope is a modernist, he's still the Pope and we can work things out. And that's false. Next point. There is no doubt, however, it is not the resistance, but Menzingen and Father Cellier and the accordists, that is, those who want the agreement with modernist Rome of the SSPX, who have failed to properly assess how, when, and why Archbishop Lefebvre's pragmatic propensity to react to changing circumstances actually manifested itself, which was this. Now, here's the real picture. Archbishop Lefebvre negotiated with unconverted Rome for almost 15 years. That is, from the time of the suspension of the SSPX in 1976 until the time he decided to consecrate bishops in 1988. So Archbishop Lefebvre was meeting with the popes. He was meeting with Cardinal Ratzinger. But because, as he stated, he waited and waited and waited until the last minute for Rome to show a little loyalty to tradition. But once he became certain that Rome was not negotiating in good faith for the return of tradition, and was just waiting for him and tradition to die, this was the trigger and circumstance which changed his thoughts and actions with regard to the impossibility of a practical accord with unconverted Rome. And having secured through these episcopal consecrations in 1988 the principle of continuity, that is, continue Catholic tradition, and perpetuation of the society, he would never again be in a position to need to negotiate. As he said, he was content to wait for Rome's return to tradition. So Archbishop Lefebvre made this very clear in 1988. In the fall, he was interviewed, and he said, if Rome wants to talk again, I will put the discussion on the doctrinal level. And I will ask the Holy Father and Rome, do you accept the syllabus of errors, quas primas on the kingship of Christ, the anti-modernist oath, Pascendi condemning modernism, and all the encyclicals condemning the modern errors? Do you accept this? And if they say no, then it's not time for discussion. And he said, I will not discuss until Rome professes the faith. And he's right. And Bishop Fillet should have held this position. And Bishop Williamson also should have held the position of Archbishop Lefebvre, condemning the new Mass. It does not give grace. You cannot promote also the false Eucharistic miracles. I continue reading this work. Moreover, there were no substantial changes in Rome between 1988 and 1991, when Archbishop Lefebvre died, which would have altered his position, and contrary to the solipsistic statement of Father Simelin, quoted above, as Bishop Fillet himself acknowledged when he observed that Rome was still the same old modernist Rome, a year after Father Simelin's crazy statement to the contrary. There have been none since. So here's Father Simelin. Here we are then at Easter 2013, and the situation in the Church remains almost unchanged. The words of Archbishop Lefebvre take on a prophetic tone. This is Bishop Fillet. It has all come to pass, and it all continues for the greater misfortune of souls who no longer hear from their pastors the message of salvation. In conclusion, it is absolutely clear and certain, therefore, that Archbishop Lefebvre would not entertain the possibility of an agreement with modernist Rome in 1991, when he died, or nor in the year 2000, nor in 2012, nor 2019, or 2219. Howsoever the disingenuous misapplication of Father Cellier and Father Simelin's legitimate principle may contrive to say otherwise. In other words, Archbishop Lefebvre's principle, no discussion, no agreement, no seeking recognition from modernist Rome until Rome professes the Roman Catholic faith. It's really simple. It's really simple. And that's the spirit of the martyrs. The simple Catholic faith up against the Goliath, up against the mountains of modernism. But the truth stands on its own. So had Bishop Fillet held to this position, the society would still be keeping its course. It would be growing. It would be expanding. We'd probably have some more seminaries, many hundreds and hundreds of more missions. And all this is being curtailed. In fact, the opposite is now happening. They're starting to close more missions. And because jurisdiction is now given for confessions and marriages, that means the zeal of the priests is also being curtailed as well. Because if in one of the missions or the priories of the SSPX, someone comes up and says, Father, can you anoint my dying friend? She was Catholic, she fell away, can you come see her? Well, is she part of the parish? No, she's not, but I know her, she's an old friend, she lives over in the next town over. Can you come and see her? Well, sorry, I can't come because she's not part of our parish under the jurisdiction. This is what in practice, what it means. Now, there's still going to be, I'm sure, many good-hearted society priests who are going to come anyway. and God bless them if they do. But this mentality is already set in, because in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, all the society priories and schools and missions are now officially under the bishops of the Buenos Aires. So it's back to Archbishop Lefebvre's clear stand. We hold on to Catholic tradition, we stay with the saints and all the councils of the church until Rome comes back to tradition. And when will that be? Well, I'm convinced it will not be until what Our Lady of Fatima said. Until Pope, whatever Pope it is, consecrates Russia with all the bishops to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. And we got to keep repeating this, because this principle of the Virgin Mary has been attacked over and over again by the modernists. So you have the fake Sister Lucia, you have Father Fox of the Blue Army. He even fell for this lie, which is the consecration was already made. And it's not been made. Yes, it's true. Pius the 12th mentioned Russia, but he said it with the world, and he didn't do it with all the bishops the way Our Lady asked. And so according to the real Sister Lucia, that was why God did show some mercy and put an end to World War II. Because the Pope did it partially. And I wouldn't be surprised if Pope Pius XII is burning in purgatory until a Pope finally consecrates Russia the way Our Lady asked. Because he was given special graces. According to Frere Michel, he was given to see the miracle of the sun. He was given many graces to fulfill Our Lady of Fatima's request, but he didn't do it the way she asked. So, and then John the 23rd, of course, and these modernist popes, they're all tooting Vatican II, the humanistic solution, which was not blessed by God, which is loaded with heresies, which is destroying our church. And it's not going to be until the Pope consecrates Russia that we'll actually see again the triumph of tradition. And Our Lady, her words are very prophetic, very powerful. And the hatred of Fatima says everything. Right off the bat, what happened? The Freemasons chopped down the tree on which Our Lady appeared, the holm oak tree. They chopped it down and burnt it down. Then the first chapel that was built in Fatima by the people was burnt down by the Freemasons. And then in August, when Our Lady was supposed to appear on August 13, 1917, what did the Freemasonic political leaders do? They kidnapped the children, threatened them with boiling oil, threatened them with torture, and ordered them to stop saying anything about this apparition. So you can see the devil had his finger on the pulse, and he knew this was real. And Our Lady overcame all obstacles by the miracle of the sun, October 13th, 2017. And this miracle was unbelievable. And according to Frere Michel, because the Masonic police acted this way and interrupted the vision of Our Lady August 13th, the miracle of the sun, he thought, was going to be for the whole world to see. But because of these Masons persecuting the children, Our Lady only allowed the miracle just for that area. But it was still witnessed by up to 100,000 people, including atheists, Freemasons, and etc., with miracles. So you got the miracle of the sun, people falling to their knees saying, this is the end of the world, begging God mercy. And many of these people saw their souls, and they all came wet and muddy. And after the miracle of the sun, which lasted for about 8 to 10 minutes, all their clothes, even their socks, were dry, and their shoes were dry, as if they had gone through a dry cleaner. So this miracle there's nothing that compares to it in the history of the world except the huge prodigies of the Old Testament. The shaking of the mountain and fire and brimstone, the fire and lightning of Mount Sinai, or the sun stopping in the middle of the day, the sea parting for Moses. It's of that kind of caliber that God gave to the Virgin Mary of Fatima for the world. So this shows the importance of Fatima. It shows Our Lady has also a solution, but the men of the church didn't want to hear it. And Archbishop Lefebvre spoke a lot about Fatima and Our Lady, and they didn't reveal the third secret. He said, we're living in apocalyptic times, and that's why in the spirit of wanting the Pope to fulfill Our Lady's request, he had the whole society consecrate itself to the Immaculate Heart of Mary as Our Lady asked. But of course, it has to be the Pope to do this consecration in Russia. So we battle on, but we have to be aware, in this book called The Catalogue of Compromise, Change, and Contradiction in the SSPX, there's 103 points and counting.
105.
Yeah, there's 105 now, one of them being the recent announcement that on Ascension Thursday, which in the United States is a holy day of obligation, now they're saying the Novus Ordo decision, that you can shift it to Sunday instead of Ascension Thursday. So these are Novus Ordo changes, and the people are going right with them. They're falling right with them. And that's the tragedy. So what happened at Vatican II in the new Mass? Everyone just said, well, we have to obey, we have to trust our superiors. They went with the new changes, even most of the priests. So Vatican II was successful, and we're living now through Vatican II Part B, where the society is undergoing its infiltration and modernist change, and most of the faithful are going right with it. And I think, to conclude, back in 2012, if you remember the new approach that Bishop Follet told all his priests in the Corunum, he said, we have to take a new attitude towards Rome and stop being polemic, stop being, opposing openly, militantly the errors of Vatican II, the new Mass, and the modernist bishops and popes. And that's exactly what Grech requested from the society and Cardinal de Noia. You got to stop being polemic. Stop being a thorn in the side. Stop blowing the trumpet. Stop attacking the errors. Let's focus on unity. Let's focus on what unites us rather than what divides us.
Most people don't know about Grech.
Oh, Grech?
Most people don't know.
Oh, they don't? Well,
I know what Grech is, but
Yeah, we do, but a lot of people don't.
okay. Well, briefly, what was Grech? It was a movement in France, headed by Father Lalonde, whose whole goal was to basically bring the Society of St. Pius X into the conciliar church. And it was a whole meeting with Christ the King priests, St. Peter priests, and all this effort for ecumenism among traditionalists. That's what it was. And so Father Lalonde told Bishop Follet, you got to stop being condemning, you got to start focus on unity. And Bishop Follet sent priests, among them was Father Duchillard and some other, Father Laurens in France, to meet with these other priests and lay people. And the whole effort was lay down your weapons and focus on peace, harmony, love one another, and the hippie movement of 1960s and 2000s. So it's a false unity, it's a false love, and it's a false harmony. Because for us Catholics, and including the Pope, there is no unity unless we profess the Roman Catholic faith of all time. You cannot be united to the Catholic Church and Jesus Christ without professing what he taught. So the Grech movement was very successful, and they did succeed to get Bishop Follet to cower down. And in 2012, Bishop Follet sent a fax to all the priories saying, if any priest wants to speak anything about Rome and the agreement with Rome, they must have permission. In other words, this whole question of the defense of the faith touches on the agreement with Rome. If we agree with Rome, in its modernism, we apostatize, we abandon the faith. So it has a lot to do with the defense of the faith. So if you shut the priests up against preaching against the agreement with Rome, you've silenced all opposition. And then it was well expressed by Father Vanger when he started the New Angelus featured magazine, the branded version. And Father Patrick Giroud, he was very good in treating of the branding of the SSPX, and he exposed it for what it was. So that Angelus magazine came out and said, we're no longer going to focus on the militant aspect of the church. We're going to focus on the beauty of art, Gregorian chant, architecture. In other words, the SSPX turned its priests no longer into fighters for the faith with the weapons of the Spirit, the sword of the Spirit, the shield of justice, and the feet of the shod with the gospel of truth. No longer with the weapons of truth, but lay down your weapons and focus on peace, harmony, and handshaking. And that's the problem. It's turned the SSPX from the last lion roaring the truth to a bunch of bunny rabbits. And I would like to appeal to all my own brother priests to rise up and defend the faith like our founder, Archbishop Lefebvre, with the spirit of the martyrs. And it doesn't matter if you're kicked out by the society superiors, it doesn't matter if you're kicked to the streets. Better to stand with the truth than to compromise with error and still have a nice priory and etc. So anyway, so in a nutshell, the battle rages on. Things are not the same. Rome is still persistent in its modernism, and we Catholics, doesn't matter who you are, a little child, an old man, a priest, bishop, doesn't matter what you are. We all have to defend and fight for the faith. And call us what we are. I mean, I think our common name now is resistance, which simply means resistance to Vatican II and Vatican II in the SSPX. That's what it means. We stay Roman Catholic. And Rome hasn't changed, and so we have to keep fighting. We have to hold the line of Archbishop Lefebvre, and of course, storm heaven with the rosary and fulfilling Our Lady of Fatima's message until Rome does come back to tradition, which will be when he finally consecrates Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. So I'm finished, and if you got any questions, I'll keep recording, because some people may profit from some of your questions, and I'll close with that. Yes?
Don't you think that the church is at fault because not promoting Fatima like they should have?
Oh, definitely. Not only not promoting it, but
I mean, early days when I was a kid growing up, if it wasn't for my mother, I wouldn't have known about it.
right.
They never preached it from the pulpit, never preached anything that I can remember.
Really? Well, I know there were many good bishops and priests who did preach it.
Yeah.
And in California, there was the famous Father Peyton, who actually had videos made of the mysteries of the Rosary. But Father Peyton, the Californians all remember him filling stadia in California, full of thousands of people, singing hymns to Our Lady with a Mass, Rosary procession, praying the Rosary, in expectation of 1960 when the secret would be revealed. And everybody all over the world, the old people tell me, we waited and waited in 1960, and then it was like a firecracker that didn't blow off. It just was a dud. And John the 23rd said, this is not for our times, and he put it in the drawer. And then Our Lady was slapped in the face. The men of the church turned their back to heaven's solution, and they started Vatican II, and that's when the devils were unleashed. And God said, okay, you won't listen to my mother? Then you deal with your father, the devil, and he'll lead you. So Vatican II came in. That was a disaster. And we're still in this disaster. We still are. So...
I remember 3 years ago, Cardinal Pell said, the only reason we're talking to the society is bringing them in with us. Not that they're going to become traditional, but us going to them become Sorrowful.
Yeah, yeah, that's what's happened. That's what's happening. The traditionalists are becoming conciliar.
Another thing gets me is these people think that Archbishop would agree with Rome. I can remember one thing what he said regarding John Paul II. He said, I don't even know if he's Catholic. And he was a far better pope than Francis will ever be.
Right.
And I say he would never ever go with Francis.
Right, of course. I think, yeah, you're right. Archbishop Lefebvre would never go with Pope Francis because he's a modernist. John Paul II, he did at least condemn abortion. He told the clergy, wear your habits. He at least had a devotion to the Virgin Mary, but he was a true modernist. And Archbishop Lefebvre, remember his saying, it's not the inferiors who form superiors, it's the superiors who form inferiors. So if we put ourselves under the bishops and the modernist popes, we're going to lose the faith. And we have to fight. We are obliged to become saints today. We have to fight in the church militant. That means fight with the weapons of heaven. The sword of the truth, the sword of the Spirit, and with the full truth, the Catholic truth. That means all the condemnations of all the modern errors and the social kingship of Christ, which Vatican II attacked. And look at the groups who all made their agreements with modernist Rome or just got recognized. They have all caved in to the council. And as one of the priests told me, who went with Bishop Timlin and they founded their group, the group in Pennsylvania, he said, we didn't even sign anything. And before long, we were already changing the Mass, and we were reading, they were supposed to be traditional, they were all starting to read John Paul's II theology at the meals. And remember Archbishop Lefebvre, like you said, he was scandalized when John Paul II told priests in a retreat that the whole notion of the Blessed Trinity evolved from man's subconscious, inner conscience, for a need to have a true-eyed God. And that is pure heresy and modernism, pure modernism.
Isn't that what the people who have no faith, they're saying? We invented a God because we needed one.
Pure modernism.
Yeah.
That's right.
Father, what's the significance of the upcoming Angelus conference that people are not aware of?
Oh yeah, good.
A word about that?
Yeah, good point. Yeah, I was. It's on their own advertisement for the Angelus conferences this October. This is now
Traditional conference, I think.
2019. It's got numerous priests speaking, and then it's got a Novus Ordo priest who's invited to speak, who's deeply involved in Novus Ordo. He's not rejected Novus Ordo Mass or anything, and he pushes and promotes the theology of the body of John Paul II, Pope John Paul II. So this theology of the body is definitely modernist, definitely poison. So what's he doing speaking at Society of St. Pius X
With
conference?
Father Bergner, who is the superior in the United States. He's going to be there in Bishop Bragg.
Yeah, so they're giving full green light to this, this modernist priest speaking on theology of the body. So, and you should be aware, this catalog lists only 103, and I'm sure the priest who puts it out will add a few more because every week there's something new. But I know from the students themselves that in many of the society schools, the nuns and the priests even in the United States are calling John Paul II, St. John Paul II, John the 23rd, St. John the 23rd, even St. Paul the 6th, which is a joke. And St. Teresa of Calcutta.
I've seen that.
And it's an insult. It's an insult to the true saints.
I think in Paul Robinson's book on science, I think that the forward or something mentions something about John Paul II. Is St. John Paul II? I believe.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. Yeah,
and it's been promoted by the SSPX Angelus Press.
that's right. And they're not saints, that's for sure. But it's all part of this being absorbed into the conciliar church. And while you mentioned Father Robinson's Paul Robinson, not Kevin Robinson, a lot of people confuse Kevin Robinson. Father Kevin Robinson knows enough. He's a good priest. I knew him from the seminary. He's from Australia. And he should be with the resistance. He knows better. And he was formed in the good old formation in Ridgefield and under Bishop Williamson. But the new Father Robinson, the newer one, who's teaching in the seminary of Australia, his book on evolution has been heavily promoted by the superiors. It quotes from the Quran. It promotes the Big Bang Theory. It promotes the, 13 or 14.8 billion year old Earth, which is completely contrary to tradition, the unanimous consent of the fathers, and St. Pius X's condemnation of the modernists. So if Pius X was Pope today, he would certainly excommunicate Father Paul Robinson for promoting this garbage. He would have his books burnt, and he would put him to scrub toilets in the seminary. So really this book needs to be burned, but it's the fact that it's being heavily promoted. When Father Grun, he wrote a book against evolution, smashing evolution. The book was in German. I have it in German. It's about, 2 or 3 inches thick. And it was banned to be published by Bishop Fillet. So why does he ban the good books that destroy evolution with good facts, good evidence, and even science, that even honest science smashes the evolutionary lies? And yet this book promoting evolution is heavily backed and approved and pushed. How is this happening? And evolution, remember, is the fundamental basis for modernism and communism and all the modern errors. Evolution is deadly poison. So that's another example. So
well, there's not much mention of the Archbishop in the society anymore. It's like an old mascot now. They're not mentioning him much.
Well, they
so
can't.
I think that they're not as familiar. I wonder if they're teaching about him in the seminaries, and if they're teaching Vatican II in light of tradition.
I don't know. I don't know those facts.
Good luck with that.
It is a fact that the Good Shepherd Institute, they were given, we'll give you recognition, and you don't have to change anything. So they fell for it in the year 2005. But shortly after, a couple years later, Rome came and said, now you have to start teaching Vatican II in your seminary. And they started doing it. So whether the society is doing that now, of course we've always studied Vatican II to condemn it and critique it. But whether they're teaching it in a positive light, I don't know.
Well, I don't know for sure, but I've heard that Bishop Schneider is teaching in Vienna, in Virginia,
In our seminary, yeah.
Oh, teaching in the American seminary? I'm not sure how much he's teaching or what, but
I wouldn't doubt it.
And Bishop Hoder in Switzerland is teaching catechism to the children.
oh, to the children,
and
yeah.
hearing their confessions.
Yeah. Well, the saying goes, once you let the camel get his nose in the under the tent, there's a lot to come with that camel. So once these modernists get their foot in the door of the SSPX, they take over. They take over.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Essentially, indult group now, aren't they?
Yeah, the Society of Pius X is now a conciliar appendage. It's now just like the SS Peter, and it's like the Good Shepherd Institute, Campos. That's a fact. That's a fact. The only difference, there is no difference now. The only difference is the Society of Pius X has bishops, thanks to Archbishop Lefebvre. But these bishops have agreed to compromise on big issues, on the new Mass, that it's legitimately promulgated, to accept the false lifting of the excommunications, which Bishop Williamson even did, which he should not have done, and promoting the new Mass as nourishing faith and giving grace. Archbishop Lefebvre was very clear, the new Mass doesn't give grace, it erodes the faith. Stay away from it. Bishop Williamson teaches that it can nourish your faith, and if you have nothing else to go to, you can go and feed your faith in the new Mass. So all the 4 bishops consecrated by Archbishop Lefebvre have in some way compromised. You might say, well, what about Bishop Tissier? He's the strongest of them all. But he's agreed to be silent. He's a party man with the Society of St. Pius X. He won't come out against these errors, and he really needs to. And I would say even the salvation of his soul depends on defending Catholic tradition like Archbishop Lefebvre and not quietly go along to be just a team member. But I know his health is sick. I know he's very sickly. His health is very frail. I don't know what's going on in his mind, but we certainly can pray for them. Pray for these bishops to do their duty. And that's why I ask, show me any bishop who's holding openly and clearly the line of Archbishop Lefebvre. Archbishop Lefebvre didn't speak hieroglyphics. He didn't speak just French. His position was very clear. His theology was very clear and solid. So where are the bishops to hold his position anymore? I don't know any.
How can the resistance grow without leadership, though, Father?
How can the resistance grow without leadership? I agree. That's why we're at the point where the Virgin Mary alone can step in and bring the solution. I don't know. Will it be a sudden conversion and one of these bishops rising up finally and doing their duty? I hope so. There are some prophecies that say that St. Peter and Paul will come down on earth and select a new pope and set things back in order. The scripture says that Elias will come down from heaven and put back order. And Archbishop Lefebvre even mentions this in a conference and says, may he come soon. So, we don't know, but we do know this. God put us in this time and we just got to fight on. And we don't have to worry about, am I Catholic or not? Am I in the church or outside the church? We don't have to worry about that. Because Archbishop Lefebvre said, when Rome comes back to tradition, it's not we who are coming back under the church. It's Rome coming back to the Catholic Church, where we, by the grace of God, always stood. So that's where we have to stay and fight on. Okay?
Didn't Bishop Tomlinson, who was St. John's Society, went in with him?
Yes.
Didn't he told them they didn't do anything, then come Holy Thursday, didn't he say you have to celebrate the Holy Thursday Mass in our Novus Order Church?
I don't.
I heard anyway.
You might be right. That is usually the catch with St. Peter's. They can have their Latin Mass, have their Latin Mass, but one of them must be there for the bishop's consecration of the oils in a new Mass. So they have to compromise with the new Mass. Plus, those oils, so much has been changed, and they even use different oils like vegetable oil or coconut oil. So those oils are not valid if they use those. It has to be olive oil. So even the oils are doubtful, and the new rite sacraments, the new rite ordinations, new rite consecrations are doubtful. And that's why the position of Our Lady of Mount Carmel in Kentucky, they're made public their position, that they accept all the new rite ordinations and new rite consecrations. That's Father Pfeiffer's new position. He didn't used to hold that. It's a new position, but he's aligned himself basically with Bishop Fillet, because Archbishop Fillet has accepted the new rite ordinations, new rite consecrations, when before the society always conditionally reordained.
I just read about that.
Yeah, so if you draw the logical conclusion, once you accept that, then you accept the new Mass, then you accept you slip right into the new conciliar church. And if Father Pfeiffer is not careful, that's where he's headed. And he's defending this Father Poisson ordination, both conditional ordinations. The first one by a bishop that's consecrated in the new rite, Bishop Timlin, which at least there's a doubt. I'm not saying it's absolutely invalid. I'm not saying it's absolutely valid, but I hold the position of Archbishop Lefebvre that they're doubtful. And I'm aware now that Our Lady of Mount Carmel, sad to say, certainly in the voice of some of the seminarians, that they're quoting Archbishop Lefebvre, but they're leaving out the rest of Archbishop Lefebvre, where he re-stresses over and over and over again the doubtfulness of the new rite ordinations and consecrations, and even their sacraments are doubtful in their masses.
Yeah, they keep taking them out of context. I've been reading some of this stuff. They're taking them out of context.
Yeah, they're not honest. They're misquoting Archbishop Lefebvre, which is just not honest. So pray for Father Pfeiffer, because that's a dangerous position, and it's going to slip him right into the conciliar church if he's not careful. But I know he's trying to defend Father Poisson. But Father Poisson's not, he can do what many priests have done. Call up one of these bishops himself, like Bishop Williamson or even Bishop Tiziano Mallory, and say, look, I was ordained Novus Ordo, by a Novus Ordo bishop, can you please give me conditional ordination? And these bishops, I know in most cases, they will do it.
Why won't he do that?
Why? Because he himself doesn't doubt his own validity. But he should at least question it. He should
If he
question
didn't doubt it, then why did he have a reordination?
Because Father Pfeiffer wanted it. But Father Pfeiffer was right to have him conditionally reordained, Father Poisson, in July of 2018. But he chose the wrong one to do it, because we don't even know if Ambrose Marian, we don't even know if he really is a bishop. We don't even know if he's really a priest, because the one that consecrated him, ordained him a priest, Bishop Alinsky, Nicholas Alinsky, was known to be a janitor of a high school who had a wife and was faking to be a bishop. So that's the one who ordained him. And we know that from a letter that was a communication between two Orthodox bishops. And they're saying this is a scandal, this is a blasphemy, this has to stop. So we don't even know what Ambrose really is. And God knows. And so what the wisdom of the church is with such a person like this, where there's doubt everywhere, you just stay away. Pray for them, but you stay away, because the sacraments are put into doubt. And you're not allowed to put the sacraments in doubt. Okay, so anyway, this has been quite a long conference, but I think we can close here. God bless you all. Persevere in the battle.
Thank you.
Pray for me and pray for all the priests, all of them, and all the faithful, because we're all in this war, and it's not getting better. So may Our Lady help us. Our Lady of Fatima, pray for us.
I would have warmed this up, probably.